Now we're going to go over how to tune and take care of your extinguisher deer call. There's a good chance that some of you got your call, took it out of the package, you were so amazed by it, how the slide worked, that you just pulled it apart, and when you put it back together, it wasn't working anymore. Well, there's a reason for that, and so we're going to go over that. The number one thing that we're going to do very first is to show you how to properly take the extinguisher apart. You'll notice that there's a slide system here. And if you slide the slide all the way down to the buck position, now you're ready to start taking the call apart. What I'm going to do as I take this call apart is I'm going to flip that slide to the bottom or a little bit facing toward me. Then I'm going to grab with my left hand, I'm right-handed, the bottom part of the call with the flex tube and where the flex tube is glued onto. We call that the insert. And then I'm going to put my thumb on the slide and I'm going to push the slide and pull with the top part of my hand, the call, the top, in a very slow, short motion so it starts to loosen up, and then you'll feel it break loose. You don't want to be pulling so hard that your hand comes flying off. And what's going to happen there is you're going to end up losing this O-ring I'm about to show you. I'll do that one more time because this is very important. Compression O-ring holding the top and the insert together. We have left hand on that. We're literally pushing this thumb and just working it apart. And you'll feel it break loose. And now it's loose. Now, as this bottom comes out, you continue to push your slide. And it's pushing the bottom out. The slide is staying connected, okay? And now what you're going to see is you're going to be exposing the modest slide where it's holding onto the O-ring, okay? And that's what slides the O-ring up and down. Now, once you have it exposed like this, all you have to do is lower the modest slide out, and the ring is now released from the sliding modest slide, which goes right in these little grooves here, the O-ring carrier, we'll call that, okay? And that's running this O-ring up and down. So now you know that if you just pull this thing straight apart, you pop that O-ring off, and you probably need a new one. Now, we do have kits that come with an O-ring. It comes with an extra reed. We call them tuning kits. They're free. All you do is pay a little bit of shipping on it. And yeah, order one if you accidentally lost your O-ring. So that's how you take the call apart. So now the next thing I want to go over is cleaning and doing maintenance on your call. Now, if by chance your modest slide came out of the top, what I want you to do is, if it came out, is you have to look at the slide because it only goes in one way in order to function properly. One end of this modest slide actually has a little bit of a tip on it where the plastic extends out, okay? And the other side is just straight up flush, all right? So the flange on the end of the modest slide is always facing down toward the bottom of the top or the bottom of the mouthpiece. So the part that's flush is always inserted first into the groove. Now that will go in there in the groove slide where the modest slide goes into, and then that tab should be facing down to the bottom or this side of the mouthpiece. So if this comes off, that's the way you put it back in there. Now, if you want to take this off and you want to clean it a little bit, you can do that. Use a Q-tip. If you're going to use any kind of lubrication at all, if yours is getting a little bit sticky, make sure that it has no scent, like a plain chapstick or a light Vaseline. Don't put very much in at all, okay, if you do that. Now, another thing is if your slide is sticking just slightly, there may be like a little bit of a bump on the edge. You can just slide your finger along on that. If you feel a little bit of a bump or something on the edge, it's usually right toward the tips where we call that a parting area where the call comes off of a part from the mold. If you feel a little bump there, you can take a razor knife and you can just scrape that off, okay? You're not gonna damage it, just scrape it off, just cut that little bump off, and it'll probably run a little bit smoother for you. So we're gonna put that back in, and that's what you would do as far as the mouthpiece goes. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to take the other part of the caul apart. Now, one thing I would never do is take off the throat tube. I'd never wanna do that. What we do is we have it glued on here, and if it came off by accident, you could reinsert it into the bottom. The way that works is, and now I'm tearing the glue off of this, the adhesive, just to show you, but you would roll down the tube. Okay, you can see there's a little adhesive there. You would roll the rubber sleeve down, and you'll see that the actual corrugated tube actually inserts and sticks into the bottom. If that tube came off, the way you'd put it back in is there's like 3 ribs. Make sure you insert it at least 3 ribs deep, okay? And you just kind of roll it. You don't want to bend or wreck that tube, just kind of roll and press. You get about 3 different ribs in there, and then you just roll this back up and then put your glue, non-toxic glue, back on the caul, roll the rubber back up, and make sure it's not too high to where it would impede on the slide coming down and hitting that. It's easy to see, you can see it right here. The slide comes down to the end of that little piece right here, and as long as it doesn't hit, it's not going to impede on your slide, you're good to go. The other thing you want to look for is to make sure that you have your compression O-ring right here, and that's what keeps the top, and it keeps the insert together, and it keeps the air sealed. If you're missing this, you can just give us a call at the company and we'll make sure we send you one, or you can send your caul back and we can retune it for you if we have to. Now, the O-ring, slide, and the reed, it's inserted into what we call our tone board, okay? And so the reed is inserted into the tone board. There's a little wedge that creates the compression and holds the reed in, and then you have your sliding O-ring that changes the tones. And so now we're going to disassemble that. The first thing you'll do is you'll compress the reed down and hold it in place and just slide that O-ring off, the sliding O-ring. Set it down. Once again, you clean this up. You can put a little bit of light lubricant with no smell to it, Vaseline or something. Set that aside. Then your reed, and this is the most delicate part of the whole process. You don't want to damage this reed. So the way you're going to take the reed out is you're actually going to grab the tip of it. Okay, you can lift it, grab the tip, and you're just going to pull it straight out. Okay, you see how that just popped out? And in this case, the wedge came out with it. Okay, that doesn't always happen. If it doesn't come out and the wedge is still inside as you pull the reed out, all you got to do is just take your fingernail or something, or maybe just kind of tap it, and you should be able to get that out with no problem. Okay, so now the caul is completely disassembled when it comes to the functioning part of it, the way the caul works. And this is where you want to take a look and make sure you get everything cleaned up in here. Now, there's a few different reasons why you might want to take your caul apart. One is because you were cauling on it a whole lot and you got all kinds of moisture in there, and that moisture gets trapped between the reed and the tone board itself, which are the flat tonal area right here, okay? So you dry these off, you clean them, you clean off your reed, you get everything, you put a little bit of lubrication on your little O-ring there, you clean off your wedge, you make sure all the dirt's out of this, everything's good to go, and then you're ready to reassemble. Now when you reassemble, to make the caul function the best that it can sound, is you'll take a look at your reed, and you'll notice that there may be some kind of curvature to it, okay? If there is, it's very slight, and that curvature should always be going up away from the tone board if you notice a curvature there. Now, if you want to try and find the natural curvature of your reed, it'd be real simple. All you'd have to do is just hold it between your thumb and your forefinger and just flex it. Flex it lightly, and you'll see the natural what we call the memory or curvature of the reed. And you always want that to be upward. So the flex or the natural curvature of the reed would naturally want to flex upward. So now, let's put this call back together. We got it cleaned up. We got the reed facing the right way with the flex going up. And we're going to reinsert it into the tone board and the insert piece. Now you'll notice that this reed has a couple of little wings on it. And that's so that you know how far to put it in. So when those two little wings touch the insert, you know you got the reed in the correct position. Okay? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your wedge. It's all cleaned up. And the wedge is less wide at one end. It's a little wider at the other end. And the end that's a little bit wider also has a little bit of a flange on here that stops it from going all the way through the call. So you'll look at your wedge, make sure that the stopping end, the wider end, is on facing toward the reed. So now our narrower end will go in here, okay? It's going in real light, and just as it's starting to get a little bit of pressure on it, that's when you stop. The importance of that is because you want to make sure that your reed is completely lined up the correct way, that both of those wings are touching. The reed itself is straight in line as much as possible. You're going to take and you're going to hold that reed in that proper position and squeeze it, not super hard, but just hold it. And then you're going to compress that wedge in the rest of the way, all the way till it gets to the stopping point. And now that wedge is in there all the way. It's compressed in as far as it'll go. Double check your reed to make sure that it's straight and that the wings are touching on the insert. Okay? And you can adjust it while it's in there. Just be careful. And then you can see that you have that little bit of upward flex there. That's not going to hurt you. The last thing you want to do is crank on that reed and bend or crease it. If you do that, you're going to have to get a different reed. Okay, once again, the reed kit comes with an O-ring, sliding O-ring, and a reed. And it's good to just have an extra one of them anyway. They're free, but it'll cost you a little bit of shipping. So we've cleaned it up. We've put it back together properly. And now we're going to put our sliding O-ring back on the call. Now there's a little secret to this because this is where you can mess up. You want to put the O-ring between your thumb and your index finger, and you want to squeeze it into an oval shape, okay? The reason you do that is because you're getting ready to put it back on the call mechanism. So when I do that, without making my reed move around, once again, I'm going to press down a little bit, hold the reed in the position where it belongs. I'm going to squeeze my O-ring in an oblong form. Then I'm going to start it in on the side of the reed. Now I'm squeezing it so it don't move. And I'm kind of working and fiddling it over the reed and over the tone board itself. Okay? So I've smashed it down. I've worked it over there. I got it so it's ready to go on. I'm going to slide it down all the way down now, just not quite all the way to the bottom, but where I can get it back into the O-ring groove on the slide. So now I'm also going to double check to make sure, once again, my reed is in the proper position, that those little wings are touching, that the reed itself is straight with the tone board. And this is where you have most of the problem with your call, okay, is if that reed is not straight. Now I got everything where I want it. It belongs there. And now I'm going to take my mouthpiece. I'm sliding out the Mata slide so that you can have the O-ring carriage right here. The slider goes over the back of the call. Now remember, this is on the bottom of the tone board, not on the reed side, but the carrier actually goes on the bottom. Now be careful that you don't hit the reed, mess it up or whatever as you're putting it together. Pay attention to what you're doing. Get both pieces in there, and then you're going to have the carrier actually insert the O-ring in that carrier just like that. Okay? It's on the bottom. Now you can start to slide the pieces together. They're naturally going to want to go together like that. And one thing you want to pay attention to is you'll notice there's actually a key lock. Okay, you'll notice that on the insert. There's an actual key lock that goes into the mouthpiece right there. That has to line up with your slide, that key lock. That's extremely important. If it's offset, then it's not going to go together and you're going to try and force it and you're not going to know what's going on. So just keep in mind there is a key lock there. So I put the O-ring and the O-ring groove on the Mata slide. All right, my slide is lined up with the key lock. I can compress it all together just like that. It's coming together, and now I can just easily compress the caul all the way to the insert, and it should slide up and down and work like a charm. If you have any questions, take your time, thoroughly go through this instructional video to clean and maintain your caul. And remember, the extinguisher is 100% guaranteed. If it's not working and it didn't work out of the package, you send it back. We will personally make sure that you get the best possible product returned to you, and that it'll be dialed in, it'll be tuned in, and it will be working. Enjoy.